Huge thanks to Podcorn for sponsoring this week's episode. Do you have your own podcast? After over 100 episodes of Weekly Spooky, Podcorn has been our best experience finding sponsorships by a large margin. Their help has contributed largely to us continuing to bring you a new episode every single week. Podcorn is a marketplace connecting podcasters to sponsorship opportunities such as host-read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. With Podcorn, there is no middleman. Podcasters of all sizes can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform, set their own rates, and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivities. You never give up any rights to your podcast, and Podcorn is here to support you at every step and ensure you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for brands. The marketplace mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of how and when we monetize. Click the link in my show notes to sign up with Podcorn and start browsing sponsorship opportunities today.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Feel that warm fire. Well, my friends, it's Wednesday, the Wednesday before Christmas. And that means it's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Henrik Kuto, and I'm ready to bring you some Yuletide terror to make sure that you're chilled to the bone, even if it's warm outside. But before we get to all the mayhem, to all the vile things people can do on a holy night, I want to remind you to please take a moment and subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast app, and maybe leave us a review, because it makes a huge difference. A 5-star review can really get a new listener on board. And if you're listening on Spotify, they've just added the ability to rate the show. So, what are you waiting for? Slap your thumb down on that 5 stars and help us bring many more people some spooky on the weekly. And of course, head to WeeklySpooky.com where you can give me a little gift this holiday season by joining our Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can help make sure we keep bringing the spooky on the weekly for a very long time to come. Or you can head over to the store and get yourself a little present just for you. A hooded sweatshirt, a t-shirt, a sweater. Really, it's up to you, my friends. But anyway, speaking of gifts, at weeklyspooky.com you'll see a link to watch a brand new short horror film directed by yours truly and written by tonight's author called He Knows When You're Sleeping. It's 5 minutes long, and it's guaranteed to make you scared. But speaking of gifts, it's time we look into just how far someone might go to give the perfect Christmas gift. How dark a person's soul can turn when they have good intentions at heart. All I Want for Christmas by Morgan Moore. A deathly chill blows through the night as light snow falls and gently blankets the ground. Cemetery gates creak open. Another gust of December wind blowing out of the hallowed grounds as they do so. The man who unlocked and opened the gates removes the key from the lock. In his other hand is a shovel. He looks into the cemetery and takes a deep breath, releasing it along with a sigh before walking in. The man in question was Jebediah Hawkins. Jebediah was a gravekeeper for the cemetery. He had a wife and a little girl. His reason for being in the cemetery tonight would never be anything of question. But it was Christmas Eve. Nobody worked in the cemetery on Christmas Eve or day. Jebediah walked through the cemetery, never wavering on his path. He was on a mission tonight, one he intended to complete. A few days ago, Jebediah was working a day shift. While he was cleaning in the funeral home that rested on the grounds, he spotted something that took his breath away. It was the body of a 6-year-old girl, the same age as his daughter. In her hands was a Tressie doll. Tressie dolls were the new toy of the year, selling like hotcakes, coming and going lickety-split. Every little girl wanted one, including Jebediah's daughter. Like many other parents, Jebediah and his wife had no luck finding the doll. Their daughter's birthday went by without her getting one. It broke the Hawkins' hearts to not be able to get the one thing their daughter wanted, the one thing she asked for in a childhood where she rarely, if ever, asked for anything. The two agreed that if either of them found a Tressie that, if they could, they would buy it on the spot. Unfortunately, their town was small, filled almost exclusively with small cell phone stores. Stocks of the doll came and went in the blink of an eye, and out-of-town trips proved no better. The couple had just given up hope as Christmas approached, melancholic and ready to disappoint their daughter. Until Jebediah laid his eyes on the Tressie doll, clutched in the dead girl's hands. "Tragic, isn't it?" the undertaker asked. "Huh?" Jebediah asked in response. "Poor lass fell off a horse she was riding and got trampled to death. Right before Christmas to boot. Such a shame," the undertaker explained as he walked away. "Yeah, a real shame," Jebediah answered. The next day, Jebediah watched as the girl was buried, the Tressie doll still in her hands. When he asked why they kept it, the undertaker told him that girl and doll went everywhere together, like they were the best of friends. Her parents thought it would be appropriate then that she went off to heaven with a friend so she wouldn't be lonely. It didn't take long for Jebediah to formulate his plan. Jebediah approached the grave of the little girl. More snow and wind blew around him, the cold cutting through to his bones. "Am I really about to do this?" he thought. He wanted to give his daughter a great Christmas, give her the one thing she asked for. Can I do this? His answer was an earth-piercing yes as he stabbed the shovel into the ground. He repeats the action again and again, throwing snow-covered dirt off to the side as he works his way deeper into the little girl's grave. Jebediah's mind blocked out all thoughts of the dead child he saw only a few days ago, instead conjuring up the image of his daughter with the doll, playing happily a few hours from now on Christmas Day. He thought of him and his wife sitting by the fire come nightfall, an extra happy Christmas behind them. It was these thoughts that kept Jebediah busy until he felt the shovel head slam into the coffin. Jebediah looked down at the small box. A gust of wind blew by and threw dirt down onto Jebediah and the coffin, almost as if the universe was telling him to stop. "I can't stop. Not now." Jebediah started to stab the coffin with the shovel. As the head struck the casket repeatedly, wood splintered and flew up. Jebediah kept at it for minutes before finally punching a hole through the coffin. He stared down into the breach and saw the little girl's face and the doll. The desperate father tossed the shovel out of the grave and knelt down beside the coffin. Jebediah gulped as he stared down at the girl's corpse. He reached into the coffin, grabbed the doll, and pulled up. Nothing budged. Jebediah tried again, but nothing moved. He looked closer as he kept trying to pull the doll out. The doll was clasped so tightly in her hands that it wouldn't budge. Every tug got him nowhere closer to getting the Tressie doll. The night was moving on and the temperature was dropping. Soon it would be midnight. Christmas. If he didn't get the doll back home in time, then Christmas would be ruined. Jebediah braced a foot against the coffin and grabbed the doll with both hands. He put all his strength into one big tug. The doll came free, and so did the hands of the little girl, still gripping the doll. Jebediah stared in horror at the image. He pried the hands off the doll and threw them back into the coffin. Jebediah stared down into the hole, into the coffin, and at the dead little girl, her hands laying on opposite ends of her body. The more he looked at her, the more she started to remind him of his own daughter. Jebediah felt a tinge of regret for what he'd done. What if his daughter was dead and someone dug up her body to get something? He looked down at the doll. All of this fuss over a simple little doll. Jebediah stretched his arms out, hands trembling as he told himself he couldn't take it. He closed his eyes, unable to bear looking at the corpse. The man tried to conjure up images more pleasant. What came to him was the image of his daughter on Christmas morning, playing with her new Tressie doll. Jebediah opened his eyes and looked at the doll. He had to go through with it, he told himself, for his little girl. Sorry, Jebediah said to the dead girl. He climbed out of the grave and set the doll down before picking up the shovel. Quickly, he filled the hole back up with dirt, grabbed the doll, and hightailed it out of the cemetery, into his car, and sped away into the night. Jebediah snuck into his house, being careful not to make too much noise. He headed to the kitchen and turned on a small light above the sink. Jeb placed the doll down, took off his coat, and picked the doll back up. With a flick of his wrist, Jebediah turned on the water and started to clean the doll. After some time, the doll was clean of all dirt, and Jebediah managed to get out some of the stench of earth. He smiled at the Tressie and placed it on the kitchen table. "Now to get you wrapped up," Jebediah said triumphantly. Jebediah walked out of the kitchen and started heading to his wife's sewing room. The grandfather clock in the living room struck midnight. It was Christmas. Jebediah stopped as the clock chimed and looked at the Christmas tree. Suddenly, a microburst assaulted the Hawkins house. The windows burst open and wind and snow assaulted Jebediah. He tried to get to the windows, but is throated by how strong the wind is. Next, he attempted to retreat to the sewing room, but a gust of wind blew through the windows inside the room and slammed Jebediah to the ground. He tried to stand up, but found that he couldn't. Instead, he crawled his way back into the kitchen. Upon entering the kitchen, the wind stopped. The house felt deathly cold as Jebediah stood up, cautiously. He went to call out for his family, but found he couldn't due to a tightening pressure on his throat. Jebediah looked down at his neck and found a disembodied hand clasped around it. He grabbed hold of the hand and tore it off of him, bits of flesh and blood going with it. Jeb threw it to the ground and stomped as hard as he could on it, crushing it in a single blow. A shrill mix of a cry and laugh rang in Jebediah's ears. He spun around to find the ghostly image of the little girl from the grave hovering in his kitchen. Jebediah gasped in disbelief at what was in front of him. "What? You're dead!" he cried.
"Give it back,"
the spirit demanded. "Give what back?"
"My friend."
The ghastly girl screamed loud enough to shatter windows. Jebediah stood confused until he remembered what the Undertaker had said.
"That girl and doll went everywhere together, like they were the best of friends. Her parents thought it would be appropriate then that she went off to heaven with a friend, so she wouldn't be lonely."
The doll. It was that damned doll. Jebediah stared up at the table. How could a doll have made this happen? He asked himself. He looked at the girl. "You don't understand. My daughter, she wants it, needs it. You'll have plenty of friends up in heaven. Can't you allow a little girl to know the happiness you knew with it?" Jebediah pleaded. The girl answers with her other detached hand, grabbing hold of Jebediah's face, its nails digging into his flesh. He grabbed hold of the hand and once more freed himself, his face bearing gashes that would scar. Jebediah quickly got to his feet and grabbed the Tressie doll off the table and ran from the kitchen. Jebediah ran into the living room. As he tried to approach the stairs, the ghost appeared. She brought down everything she could in the living room to stop him in his path. Books, furniture, anything and everything. But Jebediah persevered. Finally, he reached the stairs and ascended them to the second floor. The house started to shake. A deafening cry of anguish and rage echoed through the house. Jebediah sprinted towards his daughter's room.
"No!"
An avalanche of snow fell upon the Hawkins house. Jebediah screamed as the force brought down the roof. The second floor collapsed onto the first, leaving the house completely and utterly demolished. Jebediah bolted awake, gasping for air. Despite the wintry cold, he was drenched in sweat. "Honey, what is it?" his wife asked in a panic. She rubbed the small of his back, and the sensation of feeling touch brought comfort to him. He looked at his wife and embraced her in a tight, near-violent hug. Mrs. Hawkins returned the gesture. Jebediah broke the embrace and ran out of their bedroom and into his daughter's. She wasn't there. "Downstairs!" he exclaimed. Jebediah ran downstairs with his wife not too far behind him. When they reached the living room, the couple found their daughter sitting by the Christmas tree. She turned and looked at her parents with a smile. Jebediah sighed in relief. "What kept you sleepyheads waiting? It's Christmas," the daughter said. Yes it is," Jebediah said with a huge smile. "It was all a dream," he told himself. Mr. and Mrs. Hawkins sat on their couch while their daughter began to open presents. Jebediah kissed his wife, and the two shared smiles and I love yous. From the outside looking in, the Hawkins were having a perfect Christmas. But outside, in a blackened, ethereal plain, the little girl sat and looked through the roof and into the house. She grinned.
"Well, Tressie, it looks like we have some new friends. Forever and ever. Merry Christmas,"
she told her doll, giving it a big hug before returning her gaze to her brand new toys. Who's up for some cocoa? I know that it may seem weird. Well, it won't seem weird to you, my dear listeners, but nothing makes me feel more in the Yuletide spirit than spirits, ghosts, monsters, and killers. So I hope you enjoyed that little piece of Yuletide terror. I sure did. It was actually really fun reading it in a dark room, sipping on hot tea. I hope you guys got that vibe too. Make sure you go to WeeklySpooky.com and check out He Knows When You're Sleeping, a short film directed by myself and written by Morgan Moore, tonight's author. I think you'll really enjoy it. There's a link right at the top of the page, WeeklySpooky.com. And while you're there, why not check out our Patreon? It's the way we truly keep the show going. And we have over 80 backers right now. It's the most we've ever had. But boy, would it be a great Christmas and New Year's gift to break 90 if just a few of you out there decided to jump on board. It would really mean the world to me, so check it out, weeklyspooky.com, Patreon. And speaking of Patreon, I want to give a very special thank you to our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who give just a little bit more to hear my sensual voice read their names on the show. They are Gino Lyons, Karen Ouimet, Jack Kerr, Jeff and George Hilton, Craig Cohen, Rob Fields, and Kevin Fry. Thank you all so much, and thank you to all the brand new backers who have joined up on our Patreon. And my friends, don't forget, we have one more gift for you this holiday season. There will be a very special bonus episode of Weekly Spooky publishing at midnight on Christmas. That's right, technically on Christmas Eve. It's a terrifying tale by Weekly Spooky original Shane Migliavacca, and I know you're going to love it, so I hope to see you right back here early to make sure you're fully in the fearful mindset of Christmas. So for myself, for my producer Dan Wilder, and my composer Ray Mattis, I'll talk at you later.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me. Ha 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 ha!